This is Evangelist George McTire of the Word of God Ministry, and I am coming to you presenting this clip having to do with an ad that has been placed on television that presents the notion that Donald Trump is the cause of everything that is wrong in this nation when it comes to our response to this virus. And it's only about a 30-second clip. I'm going to play it for you in a second, and then I'm going to address each point that this clip is making, and in addressing it, I will show you just exactly why all of this is just a bunch of nonsense, and the fact that evidently these people think that they are talking to a bunch of morons. They may very well be, because usually what they're doing is they are talking to the people that support getting rid of Donald Trump. And anybody that comes into that category, this clip is right up their alley. And this clip also shows that there's a lot of morons out there, because if people want to believe this mess, then that just goes to show you just how correct these people are in identifying the audience, the target audience, to keep the supporters of the Democratic Party on the so-called plantation, as I put it. Anyway, we're going to roll the tape.
10:35 Central on ABC. Donald Trump said he would put America first, and now he has. The United States leads the world in coronavirus cases. More than 70,000 Americans dead, twice as many deaths as any other country. Over 30 million people have lost their jobs, and it's only getting worse. Downplaying the threat, ignoring the experts, refusing to prepare. Donald Trump is failing America. Priorities USA Action is responsible for the content of this app. Michigan, we still need to stay careful.
Okay, there you have it. That is the ad. And as I said, these people must think that they are talking to a bunch of morons, a bunch of idiots, really. But I'm a fair person. I'll give it a shot as to going along with it point by point on what the ad is talking about. First of all, he said that Donald Trump, they talked about how Donald Trump was claiming he want to put America first. Well, he did that. Not by the viruses, this case with the virus and so forth, but he put America first in everything he has done since he's been in office. I mean, let's face it, he took a nation that basically was just mediocre, so to speak. I mean, we still led the world in a lot of things, but our situation for our citizens here in the United States was not good. I mean, when you've got countries that are taking advantage of us through all sorts of trade agreements, most of which are made by the Democrats, President Obama and Bill Clinton and so forth, and have been upheld by a couple of, by some Republicans at times. But for the most part, when Donald Trump came in office and looked at these trade agreements and so forth, and how different countries were taking advantage of us through these agreements and things like with the United Nations and the World Health Organizations and stuff like that, all of these things that happen to be, now here's the thing, they happen to be headquartered here in the United States. And they are largely funded by the United States. The United States is the largest contributor to these organizations, who, if you look at their status on how they view the United States, it's always the United States that gets blamed for what's going on in the world and how the United States needs to do more. When it comes down to somebody, quote unquote, trying to sue the United States, other countries trying to sue the United States over health issues and environmental issues or something like that, it's always noticed that the United Nations and the World Health Organization and other organizations tend to blame the United States for that. Well, when Donald Trump come in and looked at all this stuff, well, I mean, he knew about it before he even took office, because, I mean, with the connections that he has and the people that he, talks with and converses with, he knows the inside scoop on a lot of what's going on. In fact, he used to be a Democrat, so what we have, among other things, is we have a former Democrat who, after seeing the mess that's going on in this nation, he knew exactly what had to be done, but he knew he wasn't going to be able to do it as a Democrat. So he switched parties. And see, that's one of the things you don't do as far as Democrats are concerned, is you don't switch from being a Democrat to a Republican. It's all right if you switch from a Republican to a Democrat, but when it comes down to Democrats switching to Republicans, that is a traitor, because that traitor knows all the inside dope that's going on, what the Democrats are thinking, what they're planning, and so forth. So when Donald Trump started running for office as a Republican, the Democrats threw everything they had at him to try to get him not to be able to run, but that failed. Then when it came down to him actually being nominated to run for president, they really threw out all of the everything at him, everything in the kitchen sink. That failed. He gets in the office, and then he starts implementing this stuff that the Democrats definitely had problems with him doing this. But once again, he set about doing what he was doing, and some of the things he did was naturally renegotiating NAFTA, the thing with the World Health Organizations, and with even, I think he's done something with the thing for the United Nations. And the Democrats started having all sorts of fits and things, still trying to get him out of office. He's been in office a little over 3 years, and they haven't stopped since before they started, before he got in office, to try to get him out of office, and have failed to do it. And Donald Trump did all these things. Why? Because he was putting America first in his, how he reacted to things, and that America needed jobs. Our unemployment rate was high, and too many people on welfare, people out of work, and so forth. And also, he began to implement things to put America first. And when he started implementing these trade agreements, renegotiating these trade agreements, putting tariffs in place and things for goods coming from China, which played a key part in this virus, the way it spread and so forth. I'll get into that a little later. But anyway, everything that Donald Trump was doing was putting America first. And lo and behold, at the end of last year, America could look back and we had the lowest unemployment rate in history. The stock market was reaching new highs. More and more people who were dependent on government, like welfare and so forth, especially the black community. Record numbers of them were getting off of welfare because they had become self-sufficient and were now in a position where they didn't need government handouts. Not only that, but they also were able to start buying cars and houses and things, goods and things which for a long time they could not afford to buy. They could probably rent them from some of these rental places that rent you furniture and TVs and stuff like that. But now they were able to purchase this stuff. So America, by Donald Trump putting things first for the United States, had all the evidence in the world that what he was doing was working, and truly other nations began to realize that America, you couldn't just come to us and try to blame us for things that we didn't have anything to do with, but yet still try to make us pay for it and this, that, and the other, through all, like I said, all these trade agreements. Like even the Democrats were talking about how bad NAFTA was, and that was put in place by Bill Clinton. But anyway, getting back to this ad. So here comes this ad now that is during an election year. And the first thing comes out of these people's mouths is that Donald Trump said he was going to put America first, and he has. Then they get into the cases about this coronavirus. They say America is number one in the world for the number of cases of this virus. That, my friends, is true. I have no disagreement with that. The next thing they say is the number of deaths. They say the number of deaths, which is over 70,000, is over twice as many as any other country, that is also true. I'm just going to say that, but I will address that issue in a minute as well. Then they talk about the numbers of jobs lost, or people that have lost their jobs, is over 30 million. Once again, I have to agree with them. That is true. Then they go on and say that he's downplaying the threat of this virus. He's ignoring the experts. He's refusing to prepare. Then they say Donald Trump is failing America. To all of that, I have only one thing to say. Nonsense! And here's why. Now, as far as the first part where this ad says that the United States is the number one cases of instances of the virus. In other words, we're number one in how many cases we have, and that the number of deaths, which is over 70,000, is over twice as many as any other country. And I said that is true. What you evidently don't know, or some of you do know if you've been following the other videos that I've done on this issue, it is my sincere belief, and I have the evidence to prove it. And I'll put, if you go on YouTube, you're going to look down below this video, and what you're going to see is a small description of what the content of this video is, and then you'll see some words where it says show more. If you click on that show more, there's going to be some links to different videos, and I will try to give you the name of those videos as I go along, which basically one video in particular, the one that I did just before this one, is called COVID-19. Is this a disguised biological warfare attack on the United States? Where I show that if in reality the United States has 5 times as many cases at the time, which is, I think, was 1,300,000 some odd thousand. That's over twice as many. I mean, that's over 5 times as many cases as the number 2 country out of 212. Spain is number 2. We have 5 times more cases than Spain has. So that is why I say that in my mind, and the way I'm thinking and the way I investigated this, this was a biological warfare attack on the United States, but it had to be disguised by China, who I believe are the main ones that orchestrated this attack for the sole purpose, because you got to realize the things that Donald Trump renegotiated and things, that took a lot of wind out of the sails that China was on as far as coming into being a world power, a communist country being a world power. And Donald Trump comes in and he puts things in place which basically knocks the winds out of their sails and knocks their foundation out from under them from becoming a world power. So they have a reason to want to get rid of Donald Trump themselves, along with the Democrats. And as I show you in the video, I believe that this is a collusion between China and the leadership of the Democratic Party, and probably funded by a man by the name of George Soros, who is a multi-billionaire, and he has been trying to fund anybody that's going to help get Donald Trump out of office. He's always funding the Democrats. I believe there is a good case to be made that by Donald Trump, by the United States being targeted, they had to do something to get rid of all of the things that Donald Trump could run on, like a good economy, the lowest unemployment rate, the most jobs created and so forth. They had to get rid of all of that. and they have done it. Now that they've done it, now they're going to claim that Donald Trump is the reason for that. But anyway, you can get into that clip because I'm not going to go into too much details and look at the evidence for that to be made. Now, the next thing that they talked about is the 70,000 plus deaths in the United States being twice as many as any other nation. Well, of course, there's going to be twice as many as any other any other state or country when you consider the fact that if the United States was targeted, then it's obvious that evidently we're going to have more deaths. I mean, we've got 5 times as many cases as any other nation, so then naturally we're going to have a higher death toll. But in that, as I have used in another clip, I'll put down the links to the clips that I have that have the relevant information. But what most of you probably don't know, I know the morons don't know, but anybody else that's been following the news and listening to the news being reported by neutral organizations, which really aren't that many, but it's been said that the number of cases of people dying by this coronavirus are not actually as high as the numbers show. And the reason being, the numbers being that high, is because all of the hospitals, all of the medical examiners have all been instructed that if anybody dies that has the coronavirus in their body, they are to list that person as having died by the coronavirus. Doesn't matter whether the person had their brains blown out by a gunshot wound, whether they actually had a heart attack or stroke and died from those, or complications from Alzheimer's or any of the other diseases, cancer or whatever the case may be. If the person dies from any one of those and they have coronavirus in their system, they are to be listed as having died by coronavirus, which means if you look at the death certificate, under the cause of death, line 1 is supposed to be for the main cause of death, with any lines below that as secondary causes that helped bring about the death, but the main death was basically listed on line 1. Well, on line 1, they're going to have coronavirus if the person had coronavirus in their system. The reason being, they can't perform any autopsies to see exactly what the person died of, because with the virus being as contagious as it is, and it's easy to spread and things like that, people are being told to forego autopsies, which then means the only thing that the people can really put down is the coronavirus as being the cause of death. So if you take that away, the numbers would probably be a lot lower. But with the way things were spreading in the United States, with the funeral homes, hospitals, and things being overflowed with patients from coronavirus and people dying and so forth, there was no time to be even trying to do an autopsy. Plus, fact, like I said, between each autopsy, they'd have to completely disinfect the room, the table that they had the body on, and so forth. Too much time. with this thing spreading the way it was. So the causes of death of a lot of these 70,000 people may not have been because of the coronavirus directly, but nobody knows because no autopsy was done. So these numbers are suspect at the least. We can't go back and, well, unless somebody wants to autopsy the person, to have them dug up out of the ground if they've been buried or something, exhume the body and then autopsy it. But right now they're going with the coronavirus thing. So, like I say, that's just a number. It's not necessarily a conspiracy, but at the same time, you have to look at the fact that the numbers are not wholly correct. Now, the next thing that they come up with is the number of jobs lost or the number of people being laid off and out of work. Once again, like I said, I had no problem with that, other than the fact if they're going to try to blame Donald Trump for this, that's a stretch. Primarily because of the fact, according to the medical experts put in place or that were consulted by the Democratic Party, by the liberal news media, by I don't know how many other different organizations and so forth, and with the fact that people were saying that the only way to stop the spread of this virus is to basically self-isolate yourselves from the rest of the community. In other words, stay at home, don't go to work, don't go out shopping, don't do this, don't do that. And a lot of the health experts naturally agreed with that. So, if you're going to say then that we've lost so many thousands of jobs, actually I think the numbers is close to several million jobs. Depends on the circumstances of the layoffs and carrying on and businesses shutting down. That's all because of the fact we're supposed to be, according to the Democrats, trying to look out for the health and well-being of the citizens. So the thing is, shut the nation down except for essential services and so forth, like police, fire, medical, and something like that, or places where you got to go to buy your essential products like soap, toilet paper, food, and things like that. Those places remain open, but other than that, everybody is supposed to stay at home. So that means factories had to shut down because they aren't really essential. Well, except for the fact now that the factories are shut down, people don't have any income. They're waiting on stimulus checks coming from the government and the like. All of these things basically have put Americans in the position of not having any income to even go buy any food and essentials because they're waiting on the government, which has been swamped by requests, for this stimulus package, to cover their lost income until they can afford to get unemployment and so forth. The system is all messed up because we've never dealt in a situation like this. But the point of the matter is, you can't blame this on Donald Trump when Donald Trump primarily really resisted the United States doing all of this, because if you can remember, he at one point made a statement and the Democrats ridiculed him about it, is that we don't want the cure to be worse than the disease itself. And by that, he was saying these steps that we're trying to go through to combat this virus are going to do far more damage to this nation than the disease itself would do if we probably didn't do nothing. Now, this was in the early stages of when the pandemic was first getting started, but still in all, if you look at the numbers and things of the cases that we've gone, that have taken place in this nation and so forth, it's almost as if what he was saying back then was true, but he went along with what the medical, quote unquote, medical experts were saying, just because of the fact that, this was new ground for everybody. But now that things are starting to, we're getting close to November, the election year, and so now here come these people blaming Donald Trump. Hopefully they're hoping that nobody remembers that it was the Democrats that were pushing for stuff like this in the first place, and that the Democratic Party, along with China, had an agenda to get rid of Donald Trump. And they are playing that to the core. I expect more ads to come out to essentially go along with what this particular ad says, and that is that Donald Trump is the cause of this, but in reality, it's the Democrats, and they are experts that are the cause of this. Now, I'm going to get into these other claims, and like I say, I'm going to put some links down below this video on the YouTube so that you can check it out for yourself. But the bottom line is, these claims are bogus and nonsense. Okay, in this last segment here, I probably might be able to get through it in about 5 or 10 minutes. Hopefully, I don't want to be stretching this out too long. But I'm going to cover some of these other charges that this ad is making. Number one, says Donald Trump was downplaying the threat. Well, of course, he was downplaying the threat to this standpoint, and that is, since this is all new ground and new territory, we've had other flus and things like that have affected the United States and so forth, and we've had high cases of people being infected, and even in 2009, during Barack Obama's first term, we had the H1N1 virus, I believe that's the one it was called, and 10,000 people or so, I think, died from that. I'm not sure the numbers right offhand. But anyway, when you're looking at the case of something being a flu, and see, nobody actually really knew what how bad this was going to be when it was first presented to Donald Trump as being, a flu or something like that. When the Democrats were even addressing the issue, they said, oh, it's nothing but a flu or something like that. There's no big deal about it. But as it began to get more serious, Donald Trump still was not ready to say, and that this was some sort of pandemic, because the World Health Organization had not listed it as such. But Donald Trump took some steps, basically by putting a limit on the number of flights of people coming in from China to the United States because he wanted to help try to prevent the virus from spreading. And who jumped all over him about it? The Democrats. Oh, I mean, they talked about him being, this was a racist policy. In fact, when he even labeled the virus as being uh, either a Chinese virus or a Wuhan virus or something like that, they got on him about labeling the virus as being what it was from Wuhan, China, as being some sort of a racist thing. But in the past we've had the Hong Kong flu. I think we've had the Shanghai flu. We've had things like the swine flu and a couple of other flus that were named basically by where they originated from. So why the Democrats are jumping up trying to protect China from this disease being named, saying that the disease came from China. Uh, the only reason why they were doing that is the fact they're trying to kiss up to China, because remember now, China and the Democrats have one thing in common: get rid of Donald Trump. So Donald Trump, just like everybody else, uh, and even some of like I say, the Democrats and some of the other people of the healthcare organizations did not see this as being as bad as it was going to be. So initially, yeah, Donald Trump downplayed the threat because the Democrats were also downplaying the threat too, even though I think that the leadership of the Democratic Party knew what was coming because they had helped orchestrate it, and that's the case for why Donald Trump initially downplayed it. Now the next thing is ignoring the experts. Well, once again, even before the disease became as bad as it was, we had medical experts talking about the fact that this disease was terrible. It was going to do this, it was going to do that, and they were given worst case scenarios as the disease was progressing. And I mean, they were coming up with outrageous numbers. One thing was like in New York. I think either it was Bill De Blasio, the mayor of New York, or what's the name, Cuomo, the governor of New York, were claiming that they needed 30,000 or some odd of these respirators or something like that, and that Donald Trump wasn't providing them for the people and carrying on. And Donald Trump said they don't need that many. And right away, the Democrats pounced all over. I see that all he's worried about is getting reelected. He don't care about the lives of all these thousands of people and things. People are dying out here and such and such and such thing. Blah blah blah. This that and the other. And they get on and on and on and stuff and carrying on. And Donald Trump said they don't need that many. And then come to find out, if you look at it, all of these extra things where they built some sort of triage thing or whatever the case was in Central Park to handle all of the extra excess beds that were going to be needed to treat all of these so-called people that were going to be sick and things like that. And here in Detroit, we had one of our arenas converted into a thing for several, I think about having 1,000 extra beds or something like that. And in each case, neither was even used that much. I think out of the one here in Detroit, out of 1,000 beds or something like that, I think they only used about 10. In New York, all these 30,000 respirators that they were claiming that they were going to be needed, they only needed about 700 or 800. So, like I say, the liberals, like I told you before, and it's another link I'll put down. The Democrats always operate from the standpoint of fear. See, if they can get you in a position to fear something, then what's going to happen is you're going to start thinking and acting irrationally, which is just what they want. And so naturally, you're going to look at Donald Trump. Yeah, why don't he provide all them things like that? He should be making these factories produce all those respirators and things, because all them people going to die in New York because they don't have enough respirators and blah, this, that, and the other, and carrying on. And then come to find out, here we are 3 months later, didn't need them. In fact, they're starting to dismantle a lot of what they thought they were going to need now. So that just goes to show you, which does bring into the other charge that they made is that he was refusing to prepare. Well, evidently Donald Trump knew more than a lot of people thinks he knows. And like I said, since he was at one time a Democrat, he knows how the Democrats play the game. They throw out all these numbers and carrying on, just like this expert, one of these medical experts they had on Meet the Press, that was claiming that 5 to 15% of the American public was infected by the coronavirus, when in reality, and that's another link I'll put down here, where the 15 to 45% of the American public come to from anywhere from 16 million up to 49 million people infected. When if you look at the chart, which is on those clips as well, at the time we had the latest one was about 1 million. So he's out there talking about, this is a medical expert now, he's talking about 16 million to 49 million people haven't been infected, when if you look at the actual charts, it's only been about 1 million. So right there, that is a bogus claim in the first place from a so-called medical expert. These are the type of people that the Democrats hire because they want to instill fear. So you got to inflate the numbers, inflate the casualties, inflate whatever you can just to make it appear, to make this president look bad. That's what the Democrats will do. And in closing, they say Donald Trump is failing America. No, Donald Trump's not failing America. Essentially, the Democrats are failing America. The Democrats and their supporters are failing America. You know why? Because all of them take the oath to protect and defend the Constitution of the United States and the American people. But at the same time, they're out here promoting fear. They're promoting hatred. They're promoting racial injustice. You name it. You look at the claims every week. The Democrats have something new to try to blame Donald Trump on, all for the purpose of getting him out of office, a person that was duly elected by the citizens of the United States, just so that they can get their power back, and they will use any means necessary, and that includes setting up people to be killed or die from a disease or something, all for the focus of getting rid of this president. And if you want to support them, then you are the moron that I am talking about. I'm out of here.